More lasers. You could take more time to answer the question if you like. More lasers. You could take more time to answer the question if you like. Okay, Juggling Rick, how would you solve the Citadel's financial crisis? First off, can I just say that I believe this Citadel is the greatest in the entire multiverse. Now, I believe the answer to your question has 3 parts. First, education spending must get much higher, but it has to be balanced with defense. Whoa,
Can we fact check this, please?
Whoa.
Never mind, who am I kidding? This race is over.
And that's how you run a Citadel. Candidate Morty. The number of displaced Mortys is soaring, while Rick's satisfaction levels are plummeting, and the divide between the two groups has never been wider. Solve that one real quick.
I don't see a divide between Ricks and Mortys.
Oh, shocker. I'd like to offer a rebuttal. Gentlemen, I think we can all agree on one thing. Well, it came out as 2 things, but you get the idea.
You guys finished? The division I see is between the Ricks and Mortys that like the Citadel divided and the rest of us. I see it everywhere I go. I see it in our schools, where they teach Mortys we're all the same because they're threatened by what makes us unique. I see it in our streets, where they give guns to Mortys, so we're too busy fighting each other to fight real injustice. I see it in our factories, where Ricks work for a fraction of their boss's salary, even though they're identical and have the same IQ. The Citadel's problem isn't homeless Mortys or outraged Ricks. The Citadel's problem is the Ricks and Mortys feeding on the Citadel's death.
Holy sh**. He's headed for the flavor core.
But I've got a message for them. From the Ricks and Mortys keeping it alive. A message from the Ricks and Mortys that believe in this Citadel to the Ricks and Mortys that don't. You're outnumbered. Holy sh**. I don't believe it. I can't believe it. I know. That's why you're fired.
Sounds like you're looking for work. I can offer you a very enticing compensation package. First, let's talk benefits.
Thank you. And now back to our story.
The scale of this fantasy just kept growing as more and more groups realized the power it gave them. Above all, the group who had been instrumental in first spreading the idea, the neoconservatives. Because they now found they could use it to help them realize their vision, that America had a special destiny to overcome evil in the world. And this epic mission would give meaning and purpose to the American people. To do this, they were going to start with Iraq. And just as they had discovered a hidden reality of terror beneath the surface in America, they now found hidden links that previously no one had suspected between the al-Qaeda network and Saddam Hussein.
Evidence from intelligence sources, secret communications, and statements by people now in custody reveal that Saddam Hussein aids and protects terrorists, including members of al-Qaeda. Imagine those 19 hijackers with other weapons and other plans, this time armed by Saddam Hussein.
I continue to be amazed at the people who say there are no links. It simply isn't true. What hasn't been established is a direct link between Saddam's intelligence and the 9/11 plotters, although even there is evidence that suggests very possibly facilitation and assistance to the 9/11 hijackers.
There really is evidence?
There really is evidence.
So when people say there is no association between al-Qaeda and Saddam Hussein, they're wrong?
They're flatly wrong.
Really?
Absolutely wrong.
Okay, stand by. Okay.
The driving force behind these new global policies in the war on terror was the power of a dark fantasy. A sinister web of hidden and interlinked threats that stretched around the world. And such was the power of that fantasy that it also began to transform the very nature of politics. Because increasingly, politicians were discovering that their ability to imagine the future and the terrible dangers it held gave them a new and heroic role in the world. In the post-war years, politicians had also used their imaginations, but to project optimistic visions of a better future that they could create for their people. And it was these visions that gave them power and authority. But those dreams collapsed, and politicians like Tony Blair became more like managers of public life, their policies determined often by focus groups. But now, the war on terror allowed politicians like Blair to portray a new grand vision of the future. But this vision was a dark one of imagined threats, and a new force began to drive politics: the fear of an imagined future.
Not a conventional fear about a conventional threat, but the fear that one day these new threats of weapons of mass destruction, rogue states and international terrorism combine to deliver a catastrophe to our world. And then the shame of knowing that I saw that threat day after day and did nothing to stop it.
It may not erupt and engulf us this month or next. Perhaps not even this year or next.
I just think these dangers are there. I think that it's difficult sometimes for people to see how they all come together. I think it's my duty to tell it to you if I really believe it. And I do really believe it. I may be wrong in believing it, but I do believe it.
What Blair argued was that faced by the new threat of a global terror network, the politician's role was now to look into the future and imagine the worst that might happen, and then act ahead of time to prevent it. In doing this, Blair was embracing an idea that had actually been developed by the Green Movement. It was called the precautionary principle. Back in the 1980s, thinkers within the ecology movement believed the world was being threatened by global warming. But at the time, there was little scientific evidence to prove this. So they put forward the radical idea: governments had a higher duty. They couldn't wait for the evidence, because by then it would be too late. They had to act imaginatively, on intuition, in order to save the world from a looming catastrophe.
In jail right now in Israel?
Yes, serving 18 years in jail.
For selling those nuclear secrets. He went abroad. He said he was serving, the cause of man, in effect, that the world should know that Israel has a nuclear weapon. But, well, I think maybe the judges actually listened to his reasoning, because, if you will, he only got 18.
I know I'm not going to pronounce this right. Lakam?
We're on a diplomatic mission.
Is that right?
Yes.
That's the Science Liaison Bureau, or the Israelis called it Lakam, which protected the nuclear secrets. We revealed that that was its real foremost function, but then ended up hiring Pollard, the American here in the U.S. who spied for Israel.
How did you and find out about Lakam? When was the first time it was ever publicly mentioned?
Over the Pollard affair. Until 1985, when Jonathan Pollard was arrested here in Washington, no one knew about the existence of such a secret organization, not even in the Israeli intelligence community. It was the most sacred secret of the Israeli intelligence, which is
a secret,
generally speaking. And when Jonathan Pollard was arrested, and Israel had to apologize for the US government, it was revealed that he was run, recruited and handled by Lakam. The SLB, the Science Liaison Bureau, and many eyebrows were raised in Israel. We've never heard of. What's that?
It's a genuine agency. It was, because it was disbanded right away. To please the Americans, Prime Minister Shimon Peres disbanded Lakam.
Who does the same job that Lakam used to do now?
Other people in the defense ministry. Its main job began protecting the nuclear program and also acquiring scientific and technological information from around the world. And there's no question the Israelis still have to do that.
Philip Giraldi is a former CIA officer joining me on the line from Washington. Many thanks for being with us. Well, the U.S. is launching its largest ever campaign to spy on civilians, which involves more than 4,000 agencies. What would remain of U.S. citizens' privacy?
Well, very little. This has been going on ever since 2001, and some might argue even before that. And what is happening is that these agencies at state level and local level are collecting huge amounts of information on every citizen. There are state agencies that are homeland security agencies that collect information independently. This even happens at county levels in the United States, where information about people and what they do and what their activities are is collected.
And some experts are saying that this new program would give more room for Israeli intelligence agencies to work in the United States, as intelligence sharing is a major part of this new program. Your thoughts, please, on this post-WikiLeaks world?
Well, actually, it's worse than that. It's worse than you're implying. What is happening is that many of these state agencies are actually Israeli companies that are working for the states. This happened recently in Pennsylvania, where it was an Israeli company that was collecting this kind of information on war protesters. And in the state of New Jersey, an Israeli was actually appointed as the Homeland Security Director for the state. So this penetration of American security by Israeli companies and Israeli individuals has been going on for some years.
Let me take you back to the Washington Post report once again. It says that the U.S. is importing techniques that have been applied in Iraq and Afghanistan to spy on Americans. Are we going to look at harsh methods, perhaps, being used against Americans?
Well, I don't see that yet taking place, but I think the danger here is that you have a right to privacy as a citizen in the United States or as a citizen in any country. And the fact is that the government has no right, when you have done nothing wrong, to be collecting information on you and compiling this information into a dossier. I think this is the real danger, because once you have that kind of information collected, you can do anything you want with it. You can intimidate people. You can say, well, you know, you're in debt because of your credit cards. You're doing this. You know, there are lots of ways the government can use this information to leverage this information to do things to private citizens that should not be done.
Thanks so much for your thoughts. Philip Giraldi, a former CIA officer, speaking with us on the line from Washington.
Say you're high.